In this world, there's a good way to do it, there's a better way to do it, and then there's a best way to do it, and then there's the way they do it in China. So there's 4 ways. J-cups, whenever you see these radiuses on these J-cups, a lot of times what you're seeing is weld joints. And you'll have one that is a metal bent piece. It means it's putting a metal brake and it's bent. And then you have one over here on this other side that's welded. And that's because this radius here, or this C, is really hard to do in a metal brake. It's because whenever this machine comes down, you have a die sitting on the bottom. You have this blade that comes down. You can have different types of articulation on the blade, but it wraps this metal up. And whenever you get to this inside part here, it a lot of times comes back and it hits the how the blade's coming down. So it's not impossible to do, but it is somewhat hard to do. So a lot of times what you see is you see a broken joint here done on a metal brake, and then a welded joint here. So this is a set of J-cups making for a customer, Logan. And he's got a unique situation. He's got a 2x3 rack that doesn't have holes on the outside, but has holes on the inside. So these are fitting on the inside, and it's going to give him his J-cup on the outside. So, name of the video, what's different in a formed radius versus a bent radius? Whenever they form this steel corner here, this is a product of manufacturing. So this is going to be a uniform strength as well as a uniform dimension throughout this whole radius. So this is the best way to do this. Next is to properly prep a joint and then weld it. So a properly prepped welded joint is fairly strong. It also takes a lot of time to do that. So most people won't do that. And the third option is to have this as a metal broke joint or a bent joint. Whenever you bend that joint, you can see my drawing here, you have to shrink the inside and expand the outside. So you stretch this outside and you push this inside in. So the cross section between, you gotta get that light where it's off. This is a line that goes through here. You've got another line that goes through here. This cross section right here is the thinnest part of the steel. And that thin section also is a work hardened section. So whenever you work harden something, have you ever bent something back and forth until it broke? Every time you bend it back and forth, it work hardens and it gets a little bit more brittle. Well, this has been bent once, and ideally you won't ever bend it again, but it is a little bit more brittle and a little bit thinner than the rest of the J-cup. So when somebody designs a J-cup, they need to design around that joint and not around the strength of the steel. So you'll have to increase the thickness of the steel out here in order to compensate for the compression that you get there and the yielding. Let me show you an example of this, because this is, there's times that it's not a big deal and times that it is. I mean, this is, if you look at the thickness of this little part right there, where it's had to bend, versus the thickness here. So if you can see it, that bent part is quite a bit smaller right there in the apex of the radius than it is here. And that's just a product of using a metal brake. So ideally, if you're going to do joints, I know a lot of people are doing at-home stuff. These were made out of a 2x2 1/4 inch box tube or square tubing. That's my preferred method to do that. It's a lot more labor intensive. That's one of the reasons I don't build these, is because to build them in a fashion that suits myself, they have to be built this way. Either that or are completely welded, and I'm not a big fan of that, or they'd have to be like super thick. So they'd have to be at least 3/8, and then bend the brake on the back side I'd be comfortable with. And then that'd give you plenty of weld to do a beefy weld down this side. So they'd have to be 3/8 or built this way. All right. Well, hope you all enjoyed this. And this is just something to think about whenever you're looking at different products. Material thickness, if it's a thin J-cup and it's bent, that's a sign that it's not built very well. See you later.